Yeah, 675.
675, that's the 6
And no chip or anything like that.
Nothing. And Ballybricken,
Yeah,
we give you a cane meal of fault.
that's it.
But hey, no, you're a must. You have to be on this, boy. You're as old as Ballybricken itself there.
If you're downtown, you always say, you're from Ballybricken. They'd always know it because they'd probably know about the accent anyway. The Ballybricken accent, as they say, you know.
I think of Ballybricken, it's nearly totally self-sufficient. They had everything from doctors, dentists,
Chemists,
grocery shops,
senators,
Vegetable shops.
publicans,
Sweet shops.
councillors,
barber shops.
lawyers, exaggerators, everything.
It began around 1590, the first idea of building the citadel.
It wasn't until the mid-1620s that a Captain Piner came to Waterford and he completed what was the citadel.
The citadel was very much a fort. It's where the garrisons were kept.
These were the communication with the town from the citadel without having to use their main entrance and come back in St. Patrick's Gate.
Irish people originally did not have a culture of living in town. They were of the country. And to me, Ballybricken is a rus in urbe, the country in the city.
Well, we were there with the fair days, the pigs, the smell, the washing up of the actual Ballybricken when it was all over.
The fair days really began in Waterford around 1670, when the government said that all markets have to be held outside of the cities.
You never need an alarm clock because come the 4th of May, that was the big fair day on Ballybricken. The drovers used to bring the cattle, walk the cattle in from Sleeveroo, Munnavat, Muncoin, whatever. And you'd hear the cattle or the pigs bawling at 5 o'clock in the morning. That was the time to get up then because the fair day was starting.
The 4th of May, irrespective of what day of the week, that was the biggest fair of the year. The 4th of May.
Once every Monday, the first Monday of the month, you had that kind of a commercial activity on the hill of Ballybricken. Absolutely. Godsend and come in and turn over. Just pay your expenses for the month. A good fair day.
So the pig fair was held on the side opposite Sheedy's, where Bobby Grace's pub was. Up there, and on a very busy day they went down Jail Street. The sheep fair, I think, was held in Green Street off it, and the horse fair was on the Low Hill Road. And they were all held at the same day.
It was a bit of a nightmare in a way that you had to get used to as a child, because they'd kind of hand you a stick and send you off to school, and the stick was to get rid of the cattle.
We came up for our lunch at 12:30 and you had to be back for 1:30. So we'd spend half an hour going around to the cattle and the pigs before we go home for our dinner. 5 minutes to do us at home. Because we used to get a little job for up at the farmhouse and running on the message. You know, go out and get me a bottle of milk or a bottle of stout.
All the men would be in the pubs, that's where they used to do the deals, you know, spitting on the hands and clapping, you know, this sort of thing.
And they clapped their hands like that when the deal was done. And before they do that, they spit on their hand. And you can't break that word then. That's the deal.
There was a rule that if one man was in buying cattle, nobody else would go in while he was in. Until he left that farmer, nobody would go.
There was a group of people that were called tanglers. And they'd be trying to make the deal between the various different cattle buyers and the farmers. And it was absolutely a pantomime if you watch them in action, the farmer trying to get his good price and the cattle dealer trying to get the lowest price. And in between, the tangler, by the way, trying to get his money on the percentage on the deal. And it was absolutely a pantomime. It was something that was so well organised. The farmers would leave their homes. They could come from far away as Carrick-on-Shore. And if they were coming from a distance like Carrick-on-Shore, they would have to leave at 3 o'clock in the morning. They would have to have the drovers with them if their cattle, if their herd was big enough. And they'd have to hire those drovers and would have had them hired from the previous May.
When the farmer do a deal, now right, he'd have his car in with him or his bike or whatever. So he used to pay young lads to drive the cattle home for him. So you see all the young fellas heading down the lane across the bridge with the cattle or out the other different way, they're heading for the country anyway. And they get a shilling or a half a crown or whatever they get for hunting the cattle, yeah.
So we used to have to go through the dung and the mud that was created up on the hill. But about you know, before 3 o'clock the corporation come up and they'd hose down the whole lot to be as good as new afterwards.
Now the hoses would have been powerful, they were powerful in those days, so that they'd wash down everything and anything that you could just imagine. And it all flowed down Ballybricken, went down Morgan Street, went down the Glen, and nobody ever complained. Nobody ever said a word, it was just part of life. And it's only afterwards that we realised, as time went on and life passed on, that we realised what people put up with. This is a metal urinals here. When they built the new doodles, as we call it, it was a concrete building. This is a metal building. It was a concrete building, and it was built. They knocked this and they built it and they made it bigger, and they built a wall around it as well.
Our great play area was the Doodlands, and there were the toilets on Ballybricken. And of course there was a horse trough there too, you know, and used to drink water out of it and everything. But the Doodlands was great because it had a wall kind of like, it looked like a kind of a castle around.
And if a girl came along, we all hid in the toilet, you know, so it was an interesting time.
The urinals, or the doodles as we'll call it, was the frontage on the doodles, which you'll probably pick up in some photographs today. That was basically the goal post. That was the goal.
We'd get all the rags and bind them together and tie them together, and we'd be playing hurling with hockey sticks and everything with them. Oh, we'd be kicking it. But if somebody came out with a ball like what the kids have today, you'd be like a millionaire. You'd be the boss of everything.
You could probably not be able to walk down the footpath with some of the soccer matches that we had on Ballybricken. And I'm not talking up against that particular building, the urinals. I'm talking about 100 metres length of a pitch that was marked out with chalk, heavy chalk.
I broke every window in Ballybricken anyway, that's the something. I broke every window. That's a well-known fact.
We used to have races, road races, running races on Ballybricken. All the guys who lived around. We used to run right around the perimeter of Ballybricken, and it was not a joke. This was very serious stuff as to who was the fastest runner. There was a margin around here, going around there up to Yellow Road and coming back up here. It was a gully, in actual fact, to take the water away. that fell on Ballybricken up here, and it was gully, and that was our circuit for the races, as we'll call them, that we had in our youth and not so youth.
We would have played a lot on the bull post, and we would have brought our dolls over to the bull post because there was no mart in those days. Ballybricken was just free, and we would have sat over there, and then any children from other places would have come and sat with us.
Well, historically, it was an area where they had bull baiting.
Highlights the trade that we said that went on between here and Spain, and very much in the Spanish tradition. There was kind of bullfighting in the very area here, sort of behind us.
They'd run the bull or the bulls up along the quay and up here to Ballybricken, and the mayor had to provide a rope. That was his job, to provide a rope to tie the bull up here, and they'd set the bulldogs on him.
Massive rope was supplied by the newly elected mayor, funded by the corporation, so there was approval.
You had all these sort of like cruel sports at the time, which people didn't see them as cruel, they saw them just as a form of sport, you know.
By 1798, it was finally outlawed.
Every Sunday mornings, what we used to do, all the boys and girls on the hill here, and our friends around, we used to congregate after 9 o'clock mass, be here about 10:15, 10 o'clock, and we'd all get on our bicycles and go off cycling to either Rathwayland, Kilfarracy, or any of these places. And we'd literally spend the day out there.
There was always activity on Ballybricken, you know. There was always great activity. Everything, because you had the jail in Ballybricken.
I actually played in the jail when it was closed down. We'd be all racing through the different levels in the jail, and it probably was quite dangerous because we went up to a fairly high level now, and we were kind of at the age group of 10, 12, even older, that we went into the jail.
Prior to about 1790, executions took place at the county and city gallows. Now the city gallows was up behind us here, up in Gray's Dew. That was the city gallows. The county gallows was out around where the Uluru bar is now. It would have been out around there because we had two separate jails. We had the city jail, which was here, and the county jail, as I said, was down at the waterside. So executions took place, Mark, exactly where we're sitting here now. Right across from me is the Garda Barracks, the front door of the Garda Barracks. That was Gandon's Courthouse, which was a later addition. When they combined both the county jail and the city jail into one position, and that was here. That was in 1784. The city jail had also a penitentiary, and that penitentiary was down on Hennessy's Road. So that was there, again, from about 1824. I think the penitentiary in Hennessy's Road was built. So we had two separate jails belonging to the city jail here and the penitentiary on Hennessy's Road. In 1863, they got rid of all the small little places, like Reginald's Tower was also a lockup for drunks. And they combined all that and put everything here in a brand new city and county jail, which opened in 1863. The following year, 1864, there was a man from Ballymacarbery by the name of Welch who was accused of killing his father-in-law. And he was executed right here. Well, actually, it wouldn't have been right here. It would have been up further outside the front door of the new barracks. And it was that was the last public hanging. Now, Ballybricken would have been thousands of people, men, women, children, everything, you name it, on Ballybricken, just waiting for this spectacle. But they misjudged the drop, and they made the rope too long. And when it dropped, and you must remember, everybody could see this happening, it was such a horrific sight, and that put the finish to public hangings in Waterford.
And the actual last hanging, which was a private hanging inside the jail, was in the year 1900. And that hanging was for a Thomas Dunphy who poisoned these two sons.
All the people would be all around the hill, and they'd be all praying. They all prayed for the soul of the man who was being hung. And they used to ring the bell when they'd be after performing the execution.
I might add that there was very, very few hangings in Waterford. You must remember, Waterford was sort of like a military city. You had an awful lot of soldiers here. You would have had police, and it was a very well behaved city because there was so much security around in the form of soldiers, gunboats on the quay. and the military here.
Turf had been piled up against the interior wall of the jail, and at the part which was going down what was known as the Stony Steps. And it was there so long that it affected the structure of the wall.
The Irish weather that we had just seeped into the turf. It got heavier and heavier and heavier, and then eventually became too much for the wall, and down it came.
The wall collapsed in and killed quite a few people. There's a monument to him down there now. But I remember that morning I was going down to Stephen Street School, and I was with my brother. I think he was holding my hand, I was so young. And we met a fella on the bull post, and his name was Jimmy Fortune, and some of his family had been killed that morning in it.
I used to go up to my grandmother who lived in Monastery Street for my lunch, and I went up, and it was there I found out. And I remember the funeral, going along the quay and the army band playing and the black drapes on the coffins. It was huge, the biggest funeral I ever saw in my life.
I remember that myself happening, and indeed an awful lot of people who lost their lives, neighbours, children. It was a very, very sad time, and even though I was a child myself, I remember the sadness of it.
One event on Barker Street that Annie Brophy, she took a photograph of.
Oh, indeed. Yes. Well, actually, it was Billy who took the photograph because he was the commercial photographer. And it would have taken, I suppose, in those days, really a man to do what was done, because you had to walk over all sorts of rubble and devastation to get the photographs. So I believe it was Billy who actually took those. When I was, I suppose, 12, 13, she decided to give me a shot at trying to see whether or not I'd like photography. I suppose nowadays you'd call it work experience. At that time, it was just work. And you didn't get paid or anything like that. And I learned an awful lot in those years. And I also learned that she was a perfectionist.
I can actually remember my late brother-in-law, when he was marrying my sister, he was probably about an inch lower and smaller than my sister, and she put in a few pebbles underneath his heel there, and to get him up the same size as him and all that, which he didn't take kindly to, obviously, as well there. But however,
she took the last photograph.
Yeah, she took the very last photograph of our family.
It's over there. Is it there?
No, that's it. That's one I'll take. I'll get it for you and show it. She used to deal in the shop, you know, and she'd actually given up at that stage, but Tom got around her. He wanted a family portrait. You know, our children were young, and he got around her.
There was nothing at all accepted which wasn't absolutely 100% spot on. You always got it back. If it wasn't right, you got it back, and you got it back again and again and again. I'm talking now particularly about the professional end of photography, which was retouching in those days. I believe there's such a thing now as you do something else with technology.
Photoshop.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But in those days you did it by hand, and you had to have a certain amount of great skill indeed to do it properly, because you're doing it by hand.
She was meticulous in her work really, you know, and that you were sitting the right way. She was a real pro at that job, but she obviously was, but it just took so long to get it done.
He brought them all over.
Show me.
There you are. It's nice to have it, yeah. She was great fun, wasn't she? She said, I thought you had a girl because Mary had a pants on and she didn't like that. She wanted her to be in a dress.
She probably was so busy taking photographs that she really never had a huge, I think, she had a social life, but not the sort of social life that a young girl of 22 these days would enjoy, because she was work, and it was her living, and she had, I suppose, a goal of sticking to her last and becoming very good. So I suppose she had to do an awful lot of, or perhaps forego parts of a life which may have been otherwise.
I have no doubt in the world that Waterford was a third world country in the 50s. I have no doubt in the world. I mean, there was loads of poverty, absolutely loads of poverty.
The Ballybrickeners, real Ballybrickeners, they were never short of food. They exported a lot of pig buyers. At one stage, if you look up the history of Waterford, you'll see that pig buyers lived in all the streets around there and off them.
You were never without vegetables. These men would bring bags of vegetables, whether they're potatoes, carrots, turnips, and anything like that. They were very good, and everybody was very good to one another. And there was a kind of a sense of friendliness which you certainly don't see today.
This is a typical pig buyer attire. The narrow pants, the hard hat, and he would have had a nash plant in his hand.
And what exactly is nash plant?
Nash plant is a stick for driving cattle. There were 4 bacon factories in Waterford in the 19th century, the middle of the 19th century. They major factories, and Waterford became the major bacon exporting business in Ireland, all of Ireland. And they competed with Sweden, Denmark, and the Netherlands.
These factories, meat factories, provided not only employment for their own people, but also for the coopers. And we had the cooper trade in this area on Lower Yellow Road. And what they do is the cured bacon would go into barrels for export. And the offal would be kept, and the local people lived on the offal. So, in effect, there were people buying pigs and selling them to the factory. They had their own farmers, and these people were known as the pig buyers.
The men on Ballybricken were quite extraordinary in the fact that they never looked as if they had done a day's work, because they were always dressed very, very neatly in beautiful suits with nice waistcoats, and they'd have a gold watch across their tummies, and they had bowler hats, and they would be going around like that.
They were on a different level to us, you know, and they were the people that had, as we used to say, they were the ones with the money, you know, and when they came from all over the southeast with cattle, horses, pigs, sheep, and as I said earlier, like, you know, that was a happy time for everybody, because everybody made a few shillings.
They had a Pig Buyers Association, which were situated. The headquarters were situated at the bottom of Ballybricken, near the Glen, the turn into the Glen, and they were a very strong association, and they did all the buying for the bacon factories. And in 1892. There was a strike took place when the factories decided that they could do their own buying and to cut the pig buyers out.
The pig buyers were buying from the farmers originally, and then they would sell to the factories. And then the factories bypassed the pig buyers and just bought directly, as I understand it.
This is a photograph taken of this would be now the new bridge. This is a farmer bringing his pigs to the factory, and it has been protected by the police and there are the police in the back in that wagon. So they're actually guarding the wagons coming across against violence. And this is a protest meeting about the with regards to the strike. And you can see that you could nearly imagine feelings are running very high there. There are no animals in view there, but in the next photograph I'm going to show you, there are animals. Again, there are police nearby, here and here. And these pigs now are probably destined, well, they're any one of the 4 bacon factories in Waterford at that time. Ballybricken pig bars people were associated with John Redmond, Redmondite party. And they were it was a stronghold of the Redmondite party. And John Redmond was idolised by the people of Ballybricken.
He was the MP for Waterford, beat Michael Davitt, another wonderful name in Irish history, in a by-election here in Waterford, and representative. The Redmond tradition went all the way through. He was seen synonymous with the pig buyers and tenants. He was obviously fought for fixity of tenure, fair rents for tenants in Ireland. He was also, I think, a promoter of a university for Ireland outside of Trinity College. We had a university bill in Westminster at the time, and he was one that fought vehemently for that. He was also, of course, where Waterford was concerned, he introduced the bridge order, which was something that wasn't used very often in Westminster, but he used the bridge order and brought legislation through Parliament where Waterford could get our bridge.
You see, it was a strange time because people were very politically minded, but they never discussed politics with a neighbour. That was a kind of not done. But everybody seemed to know what way everybody else voted, which was a bit of a mystery. But my father used to say to my mother, if he was annoyed with her, he would say to her, the only trouble you have is you're always looking east. And we didn't know for years what he meant, but he meant looking towards England, because she would have been born in 1901 and she considered herself English.
I remember as a young fella when there'd be elections on, and people down at the Yellow Road end of Dial Street would have drum boom, 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 and shouting long live Redmond. Well, you're talking about the 50s, you know. But John Redmond was a great character. Historically, as you know, he was the leader of the, more or less the Home Rule Party. And Ballybricken men were always great nationalists. And it was unfortunate because when 1916 happened, and the British government, not in their wisdom, but in their stupidity, decided to execute Connolly and Pearse. Hello, Ned. When they decided to execute Connolly and Pearse, the 1916 leaders, you could actually see the mantle of nationalism being taken from the Home Rule Party, as we call it, or the Irish National Party, and transferred onto these, Patrick Pearse and the executed leaders, and onto Sinn Féin. And Ballybricken men stayed true to the old ideals of Redmond, Parnell, Mar.
If you're a Ballybricken man, you're supposed to be a Fine Gael, you know. That was only a fallacy. But a lot of deals done in Ballybricken because it was a real Redmondite country, you know. Redmondite country. But as I said, I have brothers and nephews in politics, and I have no interest in politics, good, bad, or indifferent. I can say that now on the camera, can I?
Everybody used to always have the name of, that's where all the Fine Gaelers are, up, you know, Ballybricken and the Yellow Road, the Fine Gaels. And if you lived on the Yellow Road, you were automatically called a Fine Gaeler, whether you were or not. You were called one anyway, you know, that kind of way.
Redmondite up there.
Oh, Redmondite, yeah. I remember when Mrs. Redmond came onto Ballybricken Hill, when her husband died, Willie, wasn't Willie or John. But the whole of Ballybricken was chock-a-block.
The streetscape
all around Ballybricken. Most of it is retained. You have John Redmond here with a group of people, but the platform itself was up on the top of the glen looking up Ballybricken, which I never saw a platform there previously. And when you look at the thousands of people, you have Wellington Street here on this side. I remember Mackey's pub myself, which they christened as Lourdes. There were more people got cures there than they probably got in Lourdes itself. But there's the platform itself at the top of the glen and looking up all over Ballybricken then. It's a wonderful sight, wonderful. Look at it, the hundreds of people, thousands of people there. Just when you look at the hats here, when you look at the caps and the hard hats and the soft hats, they were all, I suppose, indicative of their time. Redmond firmly believed and always believed in parliamentary democracy, that things could be won through talking and through negotiation, and wasn't in favour of the resurrection that the insurrection that we had in 1916 and that, but certainly supported parliamentary politics all the way through.
First of all, great start. First of all, thank you to everybody so much for turning out today. It just shows that we are all united and on the same page, that we will not have our hospital downgraded.
Though our footsteps may wander away from that hill, yet oft when we ponder, when all around us still, on the peace that we found there, contentment so blessed, and we pray the Almighty lead us back there to rest, up the Ballybricken. Isn't that nice? Yeah, there you go.
Mikey Moore was a character. Did you ever hear of Mikey Moore? No, he was a famous character, famous wit.
The great story about Mikey is that he had a photograph, or a painting I should say, of Napoleon, and he was going over to pawn it over in the pawn shop.
He had a big photograph of Napoleon going across the road from my house, across to the Sheedies, and then the big photograph smashed in smithereens.
And as he was going across Ballybricken, he fell, and the glass got smashed in the photograph, and he just stood looking at it. He said, "Napoleon, boy," he said, "you could cross the Alps," he said, "but you couldn't cross Ballybricken." and all these stories are true. Absolutely brilliant characters, you know.
There was 3 pawn shops in Ballybricken at one stage.
People had no money. They had to pawn anything that came their way. They had to kind of make ends meet.
But usually people took out their stuff, they put it in pawn, and they got cash on it. And usually they'd redeem it before the time was up.
People pawned quite literally everything. They pawned their trousers, they'd pawn their suit and take it out again on a Saturday to go to Mass on a Sunday and pawn it again on a Monday.
The pawn in my time was up where the supermarket was, Breen's in the supermarket.
It was over there and up by Kerry, see. And now you'd know the pawn shop, there was 3 gold balls up over the dike. Look at the boys laughing.
I remember my grandmother telling me when the wild man from Borneo won the Grand National, he was trained up in Triker. And they said that all the people up there, they pawned everything to back the horse. And if the horse had lost, the town was destitute. So I was told when I was young. That was the story anyway.
There was a man in Ballybricken called Dick Morgan. And Dick Morgan had two brothers.
And the 2 brothers, Danny and Tom, both were successful jockeys. And Tom lived in England all his life. He actually went there at the age of 12. And then Danny was Dick's other brother. He was a very successful jockey. And he then came back here and ended up training up in the Curragh and trained the winner of the Cheltenham Gold Cup, Roddy Owen.
And then Mr. Morgan, by the way, was a highly respected a dealer in horses as such, by the way, on Ballybricken. And he lived there and had his stables at the back of his premises there in Ballybricken.
Up here would be the loft, and there would be, you could put, the straw and hay were kept there, and we'd put a ladder up and take out the straw and hay. And there was a little, just to the right of where Tom is standing, there was a gate which brought it out into a little paddock at the back. And that's where the horses would have been exercised. And up here, further back on the right-hand side, would have been the saddle room. And that's where they had to keep all the saddles and the bridles and the brushes for grooming the horses.
Dick Morgan had a contract which his father had before him, and to supply the British and the Swiss Army with horses. And he fulfilled that contract for many, many generations.
We had two men working here, Tom Kirby, who was from Tramore, and Michael McCarthy, who was a Waterford man from Cannon Street. And they'd get the horses ready, and they'd be trotted up and down the yard here, and then the army men had come out, and they'd buy the horses, and the same thing again, then they'd be shipped on to England.
The horses, as far as the troopers were concerned in England, the horse had to be at least 15.2 hands. Now, they measure horses, Mark, by hands, as to how big a horse was. And the recognised horse hand was that if a horse was 15 and a half, it was a good sized horse, but 16 was the preferred choice. And the 16-hand horse went to the chargers, they called them chargers, in the British Army.
But in those days, you couldn't mention that the British Army were coming here. So that was all very hush-hush. But they would have bought the horses and then used them for, you see the horses when there's any parades in London, that type of horse.
They're lovely. There's some horses over there. You see all the men riding out the horses every Saturday. You see them. I forget the man's name that they used to take the horse out. Gosh, you could find anything on Ballybricken back in the 50s. Anything.
And Dick Morgan and his father would go to horse fairs all the week. And then the horses would be led in sixes, like soldiers in a row, down the Patrick Street, down the Keats to Boor.
Dick was the first man in Ireland to fly horses out of Ireland, and what he was doing was flying them over to the horse sales in Newmarket and Doncaster, and that was a big thing. And he also was the first man, so then he, having been a horse dealer, he then became a shipping and bloodstock agent, and he ran that very successfully until he retired.
The Thomas Francis Mayer fife and drum band, and fondly known as the Yellow Hood.
It was founded in 1895 by two local men, Sam Barnes and Tom Cullen. They were two local men. They started the band, and of course it went on all through the First World War and through the Second World War. It was shut down for a couple of years during the Second World War because lots of men were gone off and joined the army and so on and so on. They were in the emergency, as they called it.
My grandfather, Tom, he was in the band. This is right between the wars, you know. And they used to have to go from one house to another. Now we say what would be happening is you mightn't be able to pay your rent. So you were coming up for eviction, right? So what the band would do is they'd move into the house with you, right? And they'd pay the rent. Do you follow me? This is what they used to do. And then they'd leave that house when everything was tickety-boo. And they'd go to somebody else's house. Now, they had no place of operation themselves, so this is how the band used to be. That's the way the band used to be.
And then, in about 1984 or something, we required a whole building, and the convent next door, the Mercy Convent, gave us 50 yards of land, and we built out and built up the whole place. There was 4 fife and drum bands in Waterford, but there was 2 in particular. There was the Yellow Road Band, the Thomas Francis Maher Band, and there was the Erin's Hope, and they were politically divided. So the Yellow Road Band couldn't go down past Ballybricken, and the Erin's Hope Band couldn't come up past Ballybricken.
We're an all brass combination, and that combination has stayed the same since the invention of the brass bands in the working class areas of the mining areas of England. It's a definite combination of 26 players made up of cornets, which are smaller than the trumpet. You should have about 8 of those. You have tenor horns, you have tubas, euphoniums, trombones, baritones and percussion. It's a set combination. We don't have any reeds or any woodwind instruments whatsoever. Our original name before I joined was the Thomas Francis Maher Brass and Reed Band, but that name was changed due to a conflict of names more than anything else to the St. Patrick's Brass Band in the 1950s, when our band room was situated down in Stephen Street, and we were in the St. Patrick's parish at that time. Many band rooms that our band have in my lifetime, I don't think anybody would answer it. I mean, our premises burned down in Stephen Street in 67. And since then, we moved from there to 11 different premises. I've played with lots of bands around the country, and each one of them, bar one, I think, had their original premises going back to the last century. So it was very, very difficult. And we were close to the brink of going out of business completely. In the early 60s, the bands more or less had their designated places of playing. When I joined, our favourite place was the Apple Market. The other band would be up under the trees in Barrack Street. You'd have another band up near Summerland Square or Lower Yellow Road. And you would get upwards to 150, 200 people listening on a Sunday morning. It was traditional.
In my time now, Sunday morning, they used to come down on a regular basis, and the band would play from 11 to 12, say, on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, the road band used to come down and play around where the bull post is.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Fife and drum music is kind of unique. We play a lot of military marches, British band marches, the likes of Galanty and Dinah's Delight, and we also play Irish marches, so it's a bit of everything. As long as we have a corps of drums, you know, we put out as many as 6 drummers, and so it's all good, lively marching music. Get the hands swinging.
The Ballybricken church was constructed in 1806 is the most reliable date I have. It was the Church of the Holy Trinity because it was without the walls.
There were reports of the country people were using the cathedral, which was the Holy Trinity within, and the country people were actually the Ballybricken people. They were known to the people downtown as the country people.
Usually, parents always went, or the mother always went to a nursing home to have either a first baby or maybe the second one. Then after that, a lot of them were born at home, if there were any more. But when I was being born, my mother went to a nursing home in Waterford, which was known as Nurse Flynn's nursing home, and it was on what is now the Cork Road. It was King's Meadow, and that was where I was born. Now that made me a Ballybrickener.
It was decided to buy some land from a Mrs. Tighe. When the land was purchased, the church then opened up Chapel Lane as we know it. The church was in a dilapidated state coming up to 1912, in and around that time, and the roof was in a bad state of repair. And at the time, the pig buyers would have been here, there would have been a lot of money, so they would have donated that to the church. In the 1950s, there were two galleries down the main aisle of the church. It was decided to take them down at that time.
An altar was set up just across from the jail on Ballybricken, and Mass would be said, there'd be devotions, and Ballybricken would be black with people. The army would be there, the members of the Slua Mirror would be there, the Garda would be there, they'd be all in uniform. It was very, very officious, very religious. To say that we were a Catholic country, certainly you come to one of the Eucharistic processions and you had no doubt.
They'd go off down the Mayor's Walk, up Barrack Street, might be down Demise Street, down onto Ballybricken and finish up on Ballybricken. It'd be a kind of a makeshift altar built there.
And all the Dial Street was renowned for having the street, an array of colours for the Blessed Mother, you know, for the procession.
You'd see houses being painted up, you'd see religious pictures and flowers out.
Get all the vases out and the holy water, everything. Just as a remarkable respect, you know. And they all entered Ballybricken then. You could hear Father Cody was the priest that said that, and Father Farrell would be shouting. Getting them all in line, I needn't tell you, you know.
Children who had made their first communion from the Mercy Convent would walk in front of the Blessed Sacrament throwing petals, rose petals, and the altar boys would be there, and then it would be a great honour. There was a canopy over the monstrance, the Blessed Sacrament was in the monstrance, and it would be an honour for men to carry this canopy.
This is me as an altar boy. I suppose, was I 12? Tall 12. I don't think I grew any bigger after that. And this is the top of Patrick Street, and this in actual fact would have been the jail wall.
Oh my God. You're talking about thousands of people on Ballybricken for the Congress procession. But while the Blessed Sacrament was coming down the other road, they'd be all kind of holy, angelic, and they blessed themselves. And the very minute the Blessed Sacrament passed, straight into all the pubs. They couldn't wait to get into the pubs.
When the processions were over and the pubs opened again, the place was thronged. Huge business done, and of course we had our public house, so commercially it was very profitable as well.
Is the night, no moon tonight, no friendly star to guide me with its light. Be still, my heart, silent lest my love should be returning from a world far apart. So deep is the light, oh lonely night. On broken wings my heart has taken flight, but lest a dream In my dreams our lips are blending. Will my love be never ending? Will your memory haunt me till I die? Alone am I, deep into the night, waiting for the light. Alone am I.
In 1952, Cattle Mart was built on Ballybricken. It opened on Ballybricken, and the idea of the Cattle Mart was that you now brought your pigs, your cattle, to the mart.
And the fact that the cattle fairs, you all right? And they built a monstrosity of pens and all sorts of destroyed the whole structure of the field, in my opinion.
They also brought in a law in 1977 whereby you could not now keep farm animals inside the borough. So you couldn't keep pigs, you couldn't keep cattle, you couldn't keep sheep, you couldn't keep any farm animal inside. So that was literally the demise of Ballybricken as a trading bacon cattle area. That was known as the powerhouse. Now that used to stand on its own before they built the cattle mart, and that gave the source of power to the area. But they knocked that with the cattle mart, and this was the runway that they drove the cattle up this ramp here, and the lorries backed in here and loaded.
The cows would either be in the trailers or they might be in a pen while the farmer would be in the pub. Sure, God only knows what kind of dealings were going on in the pub as well after the march, you wouldn't know what would be going on.
And they used to employ a lot of the local lads where they give them a few shillings to mind the cattle while they were there on the hill as such, while they retired to some of the hostilleries to whet their thirst.
We'd be coming home from school and there'd be trailers parked all over Ballybricken, and a farmer might say to you, look, he'd be in one of the pubs, Welch's or Bob Grace's or somewhere. He said to you, look, will you mind them? Sure, they'd give you 50 pence just to sit there and mind it. But sure, you'd get home then, you'd be covered in cow dung and you'd be ate. So in the end, it wasn't worth the 50 pence for what you'd have to listen to when you got home, so that was that.
When they'd wash out the mart now on the mart day, we'd go up there playing on the pens. And you'd be on the pens and you couldn't get onto the ground. If you were on the ground, the game is over.
They used to call it tig on the bear.
You get up on the gate and you swing the gate over the other one, lock the gate, the person would be able to follow you, go around and you'd be pushing gates. But the game was brilliant at it,
Poor old animals used to be just imprisoned in these small little pens, maybe 4 or 5, maybe even more. And I remember, I suppose people were kind of cruel. Kids were anyway at the time. They didn't have the sensitivities that people have now. We used to go over with sticks and we'd beat the cattle. When I look back on it now, how could I have done that, But again, I think people were a lot less sensitive in those days,
And after that, then there was only pubs on it.
Are you finished?
I'm not finished,
Yes.
The thing about it is, and have no mistake about it, the fair days kept Ballybricken going in business. Now, also, since Besco's closed down, trust me on this, the business went off of Ballybricken. Since the pub trade went, then a lot of the pubs are gone off of Ballybricken. Now you can take over.
I think the first thing that went off of Ballybricken was the labour exchange.
Well, of course, that had a detrimental effect.
After the jail was knocked, they built the unemployment exchange over here, and that remained there up to well into the 80s. And what's interesting about that is that there was a very well, Mossy, well, Gene.
Good morning, Cameron. Good morning.
How you doing, mate?
It's been a great pleasure to see you join the sunshine.
Thanks very much, Liam.
You had replaced the jail knocked down and replaced by the labour exchange, a source of commercial activity as well. And the amount of people that were there signing on and doing their business around Ballybricken, and also the Garda station there, which is now just down from that as well. The Garda station would be a symbol of law and order. That's their addition to Ballybricken.
This is a wonderful occasion. This is the third year running now we have the Thrill on the Hill. And it's great to see all the happy faces around here, because that is what the Thrill on the Hill is about ye, people. And that is why we want to back you everywhere we possibly can. And I hope that you'll enjoy it for the next few days. So all the best to you now, and 3 cheers for Thrill on the Hill!
Gone very dead at present. It was a hive of activity. Would you view that, me?
Yeah, I shall come back. She'll come back.
There seems to be less activity, but then that would be, I suppose, down to the fact that the Waterford City has expanded itself, whereas the concentration of population was around the lanes and the new houses that were built up in Dominic's Place and Congress Place and those places in days gone by.
Now we have the bandstand where the mart was. And, you know, Ballybricken is changed, but it never changed for us people that were bred, born and reared there, because we've seen a lot of changes, but the environment's still the same.
I was standing one day at Kirby's shop, and I was staring at something was going across in Ballybricken. I can't remember what it was, but was just staring across the road. And this old woman came up with 2 shopping bags, stood alongside of me and said, I got down my bike, she said, what do you think of Ballybricken? She said, you can't even buy a blay on it anymore. And she's right. It has changed completely from what it was.
And when you look at Ballybricken in those days, by the way, and you look at Ballybricken at the present time, we're looking at the biggest roundabout in the world.
They've made a car park roundabout of Ballybricken, and what a level it has brought Ballybricken and the history of Ballybricken to this day. It's sad.
But hopefully, by the way, that the powers that be in the city would at some stage soon see the potential, and investors in general see the potential of the Ballybricken as a commercial area. We have a lot of green grass there. Just now a lot of people we'd like to see. Yeah.
Our grandchildren were home here a couple of years ago, and they went back to America, and the teacher asked them, how did his holiday in Ireland go? And he said, it went great. And my grandparents have the biggest front garden in Ireland. And they have a bandstand on. And the teacher came to Gwen, and she said, what kind of a garden have your parents?
I suppose we're reminiscing now on the past, and all the old people that were there, you know. They were great people. I'll never forget them anyway. Even though, as I said to you, I go back every day, back to see the old Ballybricken.
So, as you might have gathered, Mark, I'm a Ballybricken man through and through. And I always will be. The old Ballybricken.
Were you ever in dear old Waterford, where flows the silvery shore, where the grass is green the whole year round and the air is mild and pure. I love the town and all around, and will love it true till death, but the hill of Ballybricken most, for it's there I first drew breath. If you ever want a comrade true, to risk his very life, if you want a friend, a pound to lend, or a faithful Irish wife, if you ever run for Ireland's sake, and know not where to hide, then face the Ballybricken, and 'tis there you'll be supplied. God bless you, dear old Waterford, hard by the silvery shore. God bless your hills and sweeping vales, your balmy air so pure. And may he prosper every home that studs your fertile plains, but the hill of Ballybricken most, for there my heart remains.